Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the New Media Podcast. I'm your host, Dia. We hope you enjoyed the last episode because, as always, today's going to be an even better episode. I got the whole crew with me. Everybody's in the house today, and today we got a lot to unpack. You know, in our last episode, we talked about the NFL draft, round one, and all that. But today, we're going to be talking about at the end of round one of the NBA playoffs, and then we'll give a little bit of a preview to round two, pick our winners, and talk about each and every matchup. But of course, before we jump into today's topics, temperature check. How's everybody doing today?
Man, these playoffs, they're the gift that keeps on giving. It's getting exciting.
Man, I can't wait for second round, man. My Lakers, man, we cooking up right now, so I ain't got much to say, but we'll speak about it.
Yeah, man, I mean, these last like 3-4 days, we've had some interesting games come out of that first round, and I'm excited to talk about it. But let's go ahead and jump into it and discuss that Cleveland Cavaliers New York Knicks series. The last time we talked about that series, it was 3-1 in favor of the New York Knicks. And then in game 5, the New York Knicks were able to handle business on the road in Cleveland, 106-95, officially eliminating the Cleveland Cavaliers out of the playoffs. So takeaways from that.
I don't think people were expecting this from the Cavs at all. I think the expectation coming into the season with the addition of Donovan Mitchell was at least this was going to be a second round team, maybe at best a sneaky conference final type of team. But, for these guys to go out of there in the first round in 5 is just extremely disappointing. Donovan Mitchell kind of struggled in the last 2 games, but, this team has holes that it needs to fix. They're still young, but for guys like Jared Allen to come out saying the lights were brighter than I expected is, to me, that's just ridiculous. Like, Mitchell Robinson did an absolute number on that team. And he's one of the 3 best guys that were on the Knicks team on this first round series, just absolutely dominating the offensive glass, just blocking a bunch of shots. And then, of course, the guy that's at the head of it all was Jalen Brunson. I mean, this guy continually putting pressure on on the Cavs, constantly getting to his spots. I mean, like they had no answer for him whatsoever. And then RJ Barrett, a guy who I've been critical of in the past, again, showed up in a game that they needed him the most, and they closed out the series. Like, I never envisioned the Knicks beating the Cavs in 5. I had the Cavs, I believe, winning in 6, maybe closer to 7. But for this team to go out in about 5 games is extremely disappointing. They definitely need to go out for a wing scorer. Mobley needs to develop his offensive game even more, because for them, this is not what they had in mind. So I mean, it's big ups to the Knicks. I mean, this is the first time they've been in the semis for a very, very long time, and the MSG, they're turning up. So
Man, last time we talked about it, we said, do the Cavs have a chance to take one game back? But I mean, I picked them in the 7th in the beginning, but being down 3-1, I felt like the Knicks were going to close it out in 5, man. And even without Julius Randle, after playing 15 minutes, him spraining his ankle, they just constantly, they kept the lead. Jalen Brunson was on a point. RJ Barrett showed up in the absence of Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson, another guy that's just physical, another monster offensive rebounding game, and he just bullied Mobley and he bullied Jared Allen. So the physicality was, for me, the whole series. The Knicks showed it, just being physical, running on the rebounds, getting the second chance points, and Jalen Brunson outplayed Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, just after the first 2 games, after that the last 3 didn't look too well for him, not shooting too well. Darius Garland, another player where his inconsistency, one game he's going to show up, the next game he's not, and not having another wing scorer and not getting no offense from Mobley or Jared Allen whatsoever. Felt like that was what the Cavs downfall is. Donovan Mitchell got to be prepared, got to be better and bigger games, and it showed. The Knicks were a much better team. They had RJ Barrett show up. They had, Obi Toppin show up coming off the bench. Emmanuel quickly showing up off the bench that last game. So it was a good, game for the Knicks. They had their role players show up, and, on to the second round for them. And Cavs, they got some questions going into the offseason. This double big, is it going to work in the playoffs or not? And they got to answer that question.
I think you highlight a great point, Big H. The difference maker in this series was a level of physicality from the New York Knicks. For Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle to straight up, take out Jared Allen and Evan Mobley was pretty much the key factor into winning this series. In this specific game, even with Julius Randle going out, RJ Barrett really stepped up in that second half. And they got contributions from a lot of the other guys from the bench. Obi Toppin had 12 points, and Emmanuel Quickly finally showed up in this series, giving them 19 in the closeout game. And so, the Cleveland Cavaliers, it was a bit disappointing to see these guys not really empty out the clip in their last game. With your season on the line, backs up against the wall. You expect these guys to come out with a little more aggression, a little more passion. But from start to finish, I felt like the Knicks controlled this game. Even from the opening tip, the Knicks took the lead and they never really looked back. Even there were times during the game where the Cleveland Cavaliers gave the Knicks their best punch, but even then, the New York Knicks were just not going to go out like that, and they just weren't going to be able to just lay down and let these guys win a game at home. And they didn't want to bring this series back to 6. So the Knicks, good job for them taking care of business. I had these guys winning in 7. I really thought that the difference makers in this series were going to be Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson was the one that pretty much showed up, and then RJ Barrett was the guy that took over that second spot outside of Julius Randle. So Julius Randle's health is going to be key going forward for this New York Knicks team. And then for the state of the Cleveland Cavaliers, they got to go back to the drawing board. Like Big H mentioned, this double big experiment. It was nice while it lasted, but obviously it's just not going to work. Jared Allen not being able to provide anything for this Cleveland Cavaliers team offensively really, really hurt this team. And Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, they're going to be the backcourt for the future, but they do got to go out there and go grab some wing depth. It's a wings league, like Abdi mentioned 7 months ago when this trade happened for Donovan Mitchell. They have to be able to defend on that side of the ball and be able to provide some scoring help for guys like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Evan Mobley, I think he'll be all right. Obviously this is his first series in the playoffs. He did a hell of a job on Julius Randle. That's one thing that he can take away from this series, where he wasn't the greatest offensively, but defensively he was perfect. He really took away Randle's game, and even though Randle had some spurts of him going on scoring runs and stuff like that, Evan Mobley did a hell of a job on him. And so the Cleveland Cavaliers, they got some questions that they got to address this offseason. They got a long offseason ahead of them. So overall, big ups to the Knicks, man. They're my pick to come out of this series, and they're officially moving on. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and move on to the Boston Celtics and the Atlanta Hawks series. The last time we talked about this series, the Boston Celtics were cruising 3-1. But next thing you know, the Atlanta Hawks end up coming back in Game 5 due to Trae Young's amazing game. And they won that game 119-117. But just like the Atlanta Hawks, man, these guys just fumbled the bag and ended up losing at home 128-120. So what do we got? What are we taking away from that series?
I mean, this is why John Collins is such a polarizing player. Like, the idea of what John Collins can be, I see why he floats in trade targets. I mean, his ability to quote unquote hit threes from the outside, switch out, be athletic as a 4. This is why John Collins gets floated out in all of these trades. I mean, he had 16 points in this game. In the game before, he was also good. And they did get production from some of their role players. DeAndre Hunter did show up. He had 20 points, and then Bogdanovich had 12. But DeJounte Murray, he struggled in this game, man. I mean, 14 points on 13 shots is just unacceptable. And Trae Young, after that red hot first quarter that he had, I mean, he fell off completely hard in that second half. They were attempting to keep the game close, but ultimately the Celtics, their big players showed up. Jaylen Brown hit a couple huge shots. Jason Tatum got to the basket. Al Horford hit some shots. Marcus Smart hit some shots. I mean, they got production all over the floor from their guys. And again, it's a balanced effort. 32 from Brown, 30 from Jason Tatum, 22 from Smart, 17 from Brogdon. When they're getting production across the board like that, this team is very hard to beat. Even Derek White, he kind of struggled this game. But even then, defensively, he was still good. I just feel like this team, they have a lot of options across the board. And the Atlanta Hawks, they have to look at this roster and think, how can we build around Trae Young? Is he going to be the number one guy for us going down in the future? Should we go out and get another guy to pair up with him? Because DeJounte Murray experiment, I don't think they're going to go away from it. I think they're going to stick with it. But who else can we surround around these two to make this team better? So they have a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was 113 with 4 minutes left, and I felt like, the Hawks crumbled. They could have at home, they're in a perfect spot, and they could have knocked down shots, and they give up a Horford 3, then they give up a Tatum step back 3, then they give up a Tatum dunk, and they're down 121-113 with a minute 50 seconds left, and they still haven't hit a shot, and Trae Young goes cold in the second half, and his running mate Murray, he hasn't been well the whole game. I think first half he was like 0 for 8, 0 points. He wasn't and not even helping whatsoever in the first half. So, John Collins, the last two and a half, 3 games he stepped up. He Abdi spoke about it, him coming in, try to help Trae Young. DeAndre Hunter did the same, but when your second star Dejounte Murray's not there fully, and he getting suspended the game before, and him not showing up most of the time, it's embarrassing. Although Trae Young second half, his shooting splits were horrible. He could have had better shots. He wasn't hitting his shots, and defensively, they're attacking him. So, Boston came in with the objective. I felt like they should have closed it out in 5, but they got it done in 6, and like Abby said, how can you build your team around Trae Young? You can't be putting around these type of players, to help him on the offensive side of the ball nor the defensive side of the ball. So, I feel like Trae Young's in a tough predicament. They've been, toss his name out in trade details. He's been quiet that down, but at the same time, he's got to get more help on this team.
Yeah, before I even talk about that closeout game for the Celtics, I do want to highlight Trae Young's performance on the road in Boston because, he pretty much came in there one-man army. He was down, I believe, 18 at one point in that game. He was able to rally the troops back and have a performance for the ages. Trae Young was struggling a little bit this series, and for him to come into a hostile environment in Boston where, people were already counting him out, even way before his running mate DeJounte Murray got suspended. And he came out there and put on the show, 38 points, 13 assists, got some contribution from Bogdanovich and John Collins. But to go back to that last game, game 6, you really got that. I really got this feeling, where I told myself, the Atlanta Hawks, somehow, some way they were going to fumble this. Like, they had a nice game where pretty much they could have shifted the momentum their way in this series with the winning game 5. You're going back home. DeJounte Murray's coming off a suspension, so he's pretty much well rested. And you're playing in front of your home crowd. This should be an easy one. You should be able to go into your home building and pretty much protect home court and give yourself an opportunity to go out there and win a game in game 7 in a building you've already just won. And you just won there in game 5. But leave it up to the Atlanta Hawks to fumble the bag and fumble the opportunity that was placed in front of them. Like Big H mentioned, DeJounte Murray pretty much this is who the loss falls on. If he just steps up in that first half when Trae Young has it going and just gives a little bit of help and pitches in here and there, I feel like this game's a little bit different. But without him contributing anything in that first half, it allowed the Boston Celtics to kind of just hang around in there. They got 2 tough shot makers, man. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They just had it going the entire night. And big ups to Jaylen Brown specifically, man. A guy that I've highlighted since the offseason, and a situation where I always thought their duo was always a 1A, 1B situation. And, he proved it this series to me. And I feel like he's proved it in many other series as well. He's just not that number 2 guy, clear cut. He's right up there running with Jason Tatum. He can do exactly what he does in terms of shot making. But, if Jason Tatum does have the edge on the facilitating side and stuff like that. But, those 2 guys were the true, big pieces for the Celtics. And they came through in this game specifically, shot after shot in that fourth quarter. It was kind of like, you take a shot, I take a shot. And then pretty much with Trae Young not being able to put the ball in the basket in that second half and DeJounte Murray kind of picking it up, it just wasn't enough to withstand, that Boston Celtics run. And, this team's a championship contending team. This is what you're supposed to expect from the Boston Celtics. And a couple of, their issues are always put on display for me. Their lack of, whenever they're cold from the 3-point line, that's kind of when they struggle. They're a team that relies heavily on that 3 ball. And when that 3 ball is not falling, they don't necessarily rely heavily on going into the paint, taking mid-range shots and stuff like that. So I feel like, that can hurt them down the line when they go up against tougher teams and stuff like that. But for this specific series, they're able to escape this one, taking care of business on the road. And now they look forward to a series against the Philadelphia 76ers come Monday. So the Atlanta Hawks, of course, we've already talked about, their issues and what they have to address in this upcoming offseason. They got to figure out what type of roster they want to construct alongside their 2 guys, DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, and they got to figure it out real soon. So overall, solid season for the Atlanta Hawks, and the Boston Celtics move on. But now it's time that we talk about, the most interesting matchup in the Eastern Conference from a couple of days ago, and that's the Miami Heat going up against the Milwaukee Bucks in game 5, I believe, in Milwaukee. And the Miami Heat were able to escape this game 128 to 126 in overtime. Of course, Jimmy Butler, another Jimmy Butler masterclass performance, putting up 42 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists. Takeaways from this.
I mean, like this game, well, I didn't expect to win this game just because, it's on Milwaukee's floor. I'd have expected them to win this and then at least we come back the next game because we'd have had multiple chances to end up closing out the series. But I mean, that fourth quarter, it all sparked with Gabe Vincent and Bam Adebayo. Gabe Vincent started hitting some big shots. Bam defensively, he got some huge key stops on Giannis, and then of course, Jimmy Butler just coming up in the clutch. I mean, this guy, this is probably one of the best first round series we've ever seen in our lives. This guy who showed up shot after shot. I don't even remember. I think his lowest total output in terms of points this series was like 25, and he still shot positive in that game. I mean, for this guy to consistently show up for this team without, a secondary shot maker and Tyler Hero and Bam struggling offensively, it just goes to show me the level of play this guy is when it comes to the playoffs. I mean, he's the ultimate playoff riser. And of course, we got to give credit to Kyle Lowry and Bam in that fourth quarter defensively. Have multiple stops that these guys were getting. And then I felt like the Milwaukee Bucks were shook. It felt like at some point the Heat just absolutely took it to them. Like the mentality wise for the Bucks, it just wasn't there anymore. Every time, I mean, you have Giannis throwing bullets to Chris Middleton because he's scared of shooting the free throw. I've never seen that. Like from a star player, from a superstar player, this guy is literally running away from the ball because they're gonna foul him. I mean, shot after shot, this at the free throw line, this guy was just missing, and it felt like nobody wanted to take a jump shot or nobody even wanted to score. And then Giannis stuck in the free throw line, and then what really bugs me about this series is everybody eating up what Giannis said at post game, talking about, there's no failure, it's just steps to success. I feel like that's just such a cop out. He's a number one seed that literally just lost an eighth seed with 7 undrafted players. There's no excuse. There's 100% a failure. Kobe Bryant 2008 when he lost to the Celtics, what did he say? He said that was literally a failure. Even if you won MVP that season, he called it a failure. And for everybody to eat up what Giannis says and talking about, it wasn't really a failure. It was just steps to success. It was a failure, and it's okay. Just go on to the next season. But for people to excuse Giannis to sit there back-to-back fourth quarters where he had absolute stinkers and the overtime where he practically did nothing, I mean, I just feel like it was a cop-out. And I'm happy my team won. Jimmy Butler again showed why he's one of the best players come playoff time. But for people to excuse Giannis in this scenario and just strictly blame it on Coach Budenholzer, I'm just not a fan of that.
Jimmy Butler again, man, and playoff Butler, man. Ain't nothing else to it, man. The guy showed up again, late fourth quarter. These guys were down 8, and Jimmy Butler just takes him on his back and says, "Let's go." We're about to go for a ride, and you've seen it. Game time shot and how they controlled in the OT. And I just want to speak about Giannis. Back-to-back games, he disappeared in the fourth quarter. The stats show 38 and 20, but fourth quarter shot two for I forgot 2 for I don't even know if he had a couple free throws and like he made one basket. Other than that, he didn't shoot too well. The other game he was a non-show in the fourth quarter. In this game defensively, I felt like coming down the drive, he could have had, could have guarded Giannis, could have guarded Jimmy Butler. He could have picked him up. Holiday was getting tossed around. He was getting bullied by Butler. And he just over there standing corner guarding Cody Martin or I forgot the other shooter, Max
Caleb
Strus.
Martin.
Caleb Martin made Max Strus. So Giannis just staying on the help side defense, not worrying about picking up Jimmy Butler as a defensive player of the year before. He could have done something on the defense side of the ball, but he didn't. Offensively, he didn't show up as well. And it's crazy to me, they blame Bud or they're gonna blame Holiday for him not showing up on the offensive side of the ball. But we've seen what he said post game. He asked, is it really failure losing in the first round? I mean, you're the 1 seed. You're called one of the best players in the league, and it goes to show in the fourth quarter you don't want the shot. And a lot of other people get criticized for that, but people over here are eating up Giannis and acting like he's the poster boy of the NBA. So great way for Miami to end the series. And Giannis, man, you gotta go back to the drawing board and see what they do this summer.
Yeah, this is one game that I had to keep my eye out on that jam-packed schedule day on Wednesday of last week. Terrible scheduling from Adam Silver on his behalf. We have 4 games where each game has a lot of meaning. So I was flipping the channel between this game and the Warriors-Kings game, and at one point the Miami Heat were down 18 points in this game, and I was like, okay, the Milwaukee Bucks they got this game in the bag. They're in the driver's seat. They're gonna bring this one home, and you got that feeling. And the next thing you know, I'm looking up in the corner of my screen where they showed the score during the Warriors-Kings game, and they're saying the Miami Heat are down 2 with about a minute 30 left. And then I tuned into that game really quickly, and it's Bam Adebayo, bringing up the ball and going ahead and tying that game for the Miami Heat. And I felt like, and then after rewatching the highlights for this game, it's like, Giannis is the main guy that we have to blame in this situation, because for him to go out there and miss a ton of free throws in the fourth quarter, going for 10 for 23 throughout the entire course of the game, if he's able to just hit a couple of free throws down the stretch in that fourth quarter, it's a different game. You give your team a cushion, and you probably come out of this game victorious, and you give yourself a opportunity to go back to Miami and win a game there and force a game 7. But this all just comes back down to Jimmy Butler's will to not lose. This guy, as we mentioned in our last episode, a couple episodes ago, this guy's one of the greatest playoff risers we've ever seen. And for him to go into an environment like that on the road in the closeout game, it's tough already to close out any series. And for him to just go out there and put the team on his back and drop a 42 bomb while talking shit to Drew Holiday while he was down. That takes some huge balls to do that, man, because, like Michael Jordan said, man, it's tough. It's easy to talk when you're up, but you always got to give credit and respect to the guys that talk when they're down or when the score is tied. And it just felt like, Jimmy Butler was just talking shit to Drew Holiday throughout the course of that fourth quarter. We've seen clips of, when the Miami Heat were down 4 or 5 points, and this guy was just telling him, like, I got 30 on your head already, and I own you, things like that. So, for the Milwaukee Bucks, this is something we talked about, about a month ago. We talked about this team and, the state of them, their future. Like, what do they have planned moving forward? Because, Chris Middleton's due for a contract really soon. Drew Holiday is already contemplating retirement. And then we know Giannis is going to be, Giannis. But, at the end of the day, I don't agree with what he said in the post game as well. That's just kind of what the media want to run away with. They're trying to, like, pat this guy on the back, telling, good efforts and stuff like that, but just chalk it up and move on to next season. But no, you came into this playoffs as the 1 seed, and for you to get bounced by the 8 seed, that's embarrassing, man. That's not, like, disappointing wouldn't even be the right word to use in this situation. It's just flat out embarrassing. Like, you're supposed to, the mindset, even though you missed a couple of games, the mindset is coming into this series was, the Milwaukee Bucks are just going to steamroll the Miami Heat. They're the 8th seed. They're struggling offensively, and Jimmy, we don't believe Jimmy Butler is going to be good enough to carry this team past his first round. And then for your team to just come out there and shit the bed pretty much throughout the course of the series, and for Giannis to come back and have a performance like this, where, when you look at the numbers, he had 38 points and 20 boards, but, not really amounting to anything else. It's just flat out embarrassing, man. So, the Milwaukee Bucks, they got some things to fix up. Mike Budenholzer, like we mentioned a couple episodes ago, he just got out coached by Eric Spoelstra, man, one of the best coaches in our league. And so, the Milwaukee Bucks, they got to answer a lot of questions. They got to figure out what they want to do with this roster, this aging roster specifically. And it's going to be interesting to see. But the Miami Heat, man, because it's kind of crazy, because a couple months ago, we're talking about this team not making any moves at the trade deadline. Pat Riley sleeping on that very last day of the trade deadline. Next thing you know, these guys come into the postseason with Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero getting injured so early, and now they're moving on to the second round playing the New York Knicks. So it's interesting, and it's been a wild season, wild first round. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and move on to the Los Angeles Lakers and the Memphis Grizzlies series. And in game 5, the Grizzlies were able to win this game 116-119, giving the Grizzlies some life in that series, taking care of business at home. But, being down 3-1 is already tough as it is in any series. But the Lakers were able to come back home in game 6 and win this series 125-85. Pretty much took a commanding lead throughout the course of this game, and they earned themselves the right to book a trip to the second round of the playoffs. So let's take away from that.
I mean, this was probably one of the better defensive performances from a team in the entire playoffs. Like, just from the first quarter, I think they shot 7 for 24, or 7 for 29, one of the two, I believe 7 for 24. And then the second quarter, again, could not get anything going. I mean, I feel like the offensive processing for the Memphis Grizzlies just wasn't there all series long in terms of just continually challenging Anthony Davis at the point, at the rim. I mean, he had a dominant defensive performance. Offensively, you can make an argument he was up and down all series long in terms of his scoring ability, but defensively, I mean, he showed why he's one of the best defenders we've ever seen, at least in our generation. I mean, consistently blocking shots and altering shots, and they had a point to prove in this game. They weren't going to let them come into their home in Crypto Arena and allow the Memphis Grizzlies to sneak a game and take it to 7. And, it was just a dominant performance defensively. And then, of course, offensively, D'Lo contributed, and then LeBron and Anthony Davis, they got their punches in. But, by the third quarter, this game was done. And Santi Aldama ended up being the high scorer for this team. Ja Morant was struggling. Desmond Bane had nothing going. Dillon Brooks, as for the entire series, had nothing going as well. And it's just something for the Memphis Grizzlies to go back to the drawing board and understanding where can we fix our holes, how can we improve our half-court offense, how can we improve our scoring, like ability to score from the wings. Who can we go out and attain and get better. This team is still very young. They've been a second seed for back-to-back seasons. It just shows the amount of talent that they have, but there's definitely some things that they need to address that were exploited during the series. And the Lakers, of course, defensively, they took advantage of that. They just did not allow the Grizzlies to get into their actions, and they took advantage of the fact that Dillon Brooks did nothing. And I've been a fan of Dillon Brooks' antics all series long and the entire playoffs, but I just can't respect him ducking media availability. Ja Morant, I respect the fact that Ja Morant and Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson, I respect the fact that they're like, we lost. We were talking and we lost. We got to deal with it. Simple as that. Straightforward, like men. They accepted. They had accountability. They straight up, Ja, when he was asked about his comments about I'm fine in the West, he said I got to deal with it. I lost. It's simple as that, like a man. But for Dillon Brooks to go out there and, he's walking around in his Birkin bag and just ignoring the media and stuff like that, I just can't respect those antics. And I don't think I'll see Dillon Brooks in the Memphis Grizzlies jersey next season. So,
Lake Show, man. We blew them boys out by 40. By 40. They thought they had a chance. And man, it just looked beautiful, from the jump, from the get-go defensively. We set the tone on the defensive side of the ball. And, that led into the second quarter, giving us a 17 or an 18-point lead heading to half. And all goes to Anthony Davis holding down that paint right there. All goes to our commander on the defensive side of the ball. He just, every game this series, he's been there defensively, 4 blocks, 5 blocks, 2 steals, just holding down the plate, disrupting shots. And man, offensively, we finally got that D'Lo game. That D'Lo game I've been waiting for, that 30-ball game, and he was just firing on every cylinder from the 3-point line, from the 2-point line. He was getting to the basket. He was getting around Ja Morant. And Ja Morant's just a cone on defense. Whoever you put him on. You put him on Austin Reeves, he gets his buckets. You put him on D'Lo, he gets his buckets. You put him on Schroeder, he gets buckets, So defensively, they're targeting Ja. And we just, could cruise control most of the game. LeBron had 22, AD had 16, and they didn't have to do much on the offensive side of the ball because we was getting everything on the defense side of the ball. So, I'm glad we finished in 6. I'm glad that we got some extra days rest. And Memphis, man, they got to go back to the drawing board. That bum Dillon Brooks is not going to be on that team anymore. And offensively, they need a second guy that can go get a basket other than Ja Morant. Desmond Bane is a good player, but he's not a star. He's not a star level player to back Ja Morant. And you got Jaren Jackson, great defensive player, but offensively inconsistent too much. So they got to get a second guy that can actually go get a basket, another wing, probably a wing player, and we'll see what happens with them.
Man, I got the perfect way to start this my takeaways from this game or this series off, man. Well, that trick, man. All these guys do is talk, but when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, man. Send these guys home. I picked the Lakers to win this game, win this series comfortably. Going back to Memphis, I didn't necessarily have any expectations for the Lakers. I knew the Memphis Grizzlies were going to come out of that game victorious, and a lot of things went wrong for the Lakers in that game. Anthony Davis had himself a nice performance, but LeBron James didn't necessarily have it going, and they have some efforts from Desmond Bane and Ja Morant. It was just enough for them to get by. But I knew the Lakers, when they got back to the crib, these guys are going to take care of business comfortably, and that's what they did. Winning this game 125-85. It was about a 40-point blowout in like the third quarter. I had to turn off my stream because this game wasn't even entertaining at that point. What's the point of watching these guys go out there? The Memphis Grizzlies put up bricks while the Lakers are just getting out there in transition, getting easy buckets, man. The Lakers took control of this game, game 6 specifically, from start to finish. From the opening tip, these guys, made it a point to just clamp these guys up. Darvin Ham, he's been trying to put a lot of emphasis on that side of the ball and trying to get these guys locked in because he feels like these guys have the offensive firepower to compete with anybody in the league. And so, for these guys to come out gunning, it was nothing new to them, but what they put on display on defense was something that, that was pretty surprising to them, and they want to kind of keep that thing going for the rest of the playoffs. And so, for the Memphis Grizzlies, man, like what's next? You know, Ja Morant doing all that talking, all that front running during the middle of the season, talking about I'm fine in the West. You know, and he even came out and said again, you know, after the whole Kevin Durant trade and stuff like that. You know, he raised his hand when they asked him whether or not he's fine in the West, and he kind of doubled down on that. And for him to go out in the first round 4-2 as a 2 seed in the Western Conference, that's disappointing. I wouldn't say it's up there with the Milwaukee Bucks, but it's still embarrassing as it is, because you had home court advantage in this series. You know, the Lakers pretty much came into this postseason through the playing tournament. You know, they were struggling throughout the course of this season. They turned their season around at the trade deadline, and you weren't able to get these guys home, send these guys home in the first round. It's just something you just sit back and laugh at, because you know I haven't been high on the Memphis Grizzlies ever. I've always highlighted their problems, and their problems were put on display this entire series. You know, Ja Morant, when it comes to the half court sets, when the playoffs come around, when the game slows down, you know, it's kind of tough for this guy to get his buckets. You know, at the end of the day, you know, it's going to look nice when he puts up, his 28, 30 points, but it's not necessarily helping out the team when a lot of your buckets are coming from inside the paint. This is a jump shooting league. You got to be able to, shoot from that 3-point line and shoot from the mid range, or at least be a threat from that side of the floor. But when you're just dominant in the paint, you apply a lot of rim pressure. It's going to be tough for your team to win. And for Jaren Jackson, we talked about him, having an offensive bag, but he really struggled in this game. Only putting up 14 points, 3 for 12 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3. He just really had a tough He really had a tough sledding going up against a guy like Anthony Davis, man. His shot wasn't falling. Really had a tough time trying to get buckets in the paint. And overall, this is a collective effort from the Lakers, man. When Austin Reeves is chipping in 11, D'Angelo Russell's leading the way and scoring with 31. Braun got 22, AD got 16 and 14. This is a tough team to beat, man. Especially, and I do want to give a lot of credit to Anthony Davis, man. A guy that that gets a lot of hate from Laker Nation simply because he's a very, very inconsistent guy. Some games you might get 30 and 20 from him, and then some games you might get 16 and 14 like we got from him in the closeout game. But one thing that'll never go away from Anthony Davis's game is his defensive ability on that side of the ball. He's always going to make his mark, always going to make his leave his mark on that side of the floor. And that's exactly what he's done this entire series. He made it tough for guys like Ja Morant to go ahead and get buckets inside the paint. And that's what happens when you have a true rim protector, man. And you just leave Ja Morant to a guy like Anthony Davis, and you're going to be just fine. And so for the Memphis Grizzlies, man, this should be a lesson for them. Coming into this series, I thought they were going to learn their lesson from their last postseason series against the Golden State Warriors and their series against the Minnesota Timberwolves last year, where you don't necessarily want to lose any games where you have control of. Obviously they let game 1 slip, and pretty much that's a game that hurt them in this series when you look back on it. They're supposed to protect home court and come out of Memphis 2-0 and then going into the Los Angeles Lakers arena, Crypto Arena, with all the pressure in the world on the Lakers. But that just wasn't the case in this series, and they got to go back to the drawing board, man. This roster is just not a roster that's up to championship level expectations. You have Ja Morant, you have Jaren Jackson Jr., but all the other guys, Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, Xavier Tillman, and then their bench, they're going to have to probably try to retool up that roster, get a secondary scorer for a guy like Ja Morant that can, apply a lot of pressure on the perimeter, that can get buckets in the mid range, that can get buckets on the 3-point line, and can really just take the pressure off Ja Morant as a whole. But the lesson that they need to learn throughout the course of the regular season is don't talk. Keep your head down and just work straight up. Because at the end of the day, you're just putting a bigger target on your back. And that's exactly what they did. For Dylan Brooks to come out, throughout the course of this series talking about, I poke bears and I don't respect guys until they give me 40 and stuff like that. Like, come on, bro. Just show your source. It's always good to have some good banter going back and forth between your opponent, but at the end of the day, there's got to be some sort of level of respect for your opponent. And this is a guy he's talking about is LeBron James out of all people. That's the last person you want to poke in the playoff series where LeBron. We all know how great LeBron is in the postseason. So overall, it's a great win for the Lakers. It's a great overall series win for the Lakers and the Memphis Grizzlies. They got a lot to learn coming into this offseason. And, a lot of these guys might not be back, like Abdi mentioned. I don't think Dylan Brooks is going to be back on this roster coming into next season, especially after, the performance we've seen from him throughout the course of this series. So overall, great win for them. But now we go ahead and move on to the Los Angeles Clippers and the Phoenix Suns series. Last time we talked about this series, they were coming out of Los Angeles with the win for the Phoenix Suns, 112-100. And the next thing you know, they come back home. And they close out the Clippers 136-130. So what are we taking away from that?
think this game just showed the sheer fight of the Clippers. I mean, that first half it was a relatively close game. Nobody had a huge margin on each other. I think it was like a 3-point difference or 2-point difference in the Clippers' favor. Again, role players consistently setting up. I mean, you had Norman Powell who was playing well. You had Batum that was hitting some shots, but that third quarter was an absolute avalanche from the Suns. I mean, when we talk about just going on a huge run, Devin Booker had 47 in this game, and that third quarter was a lot of the damage. I mean, getting to spots every single time, just attacking closeouts, hitting skip passes to KD. It felt like the Suns just could not miss it at all. But then again, the Clippers, again, as the series has gone on, this has been their theme. They just consistently fight. That fourth quarter in the last 5 minutes, I mean, Batum hitting shots, Plumlee just working his hardest to get up shots. Norman Powell again, Bones Highland hitting shots. They got production from everybody across the board, and they got close within 2 points, and then Batum just missed a three, and then of course the Suns, they close out the series with their shot making. They have all-time level shot making, but again, the Clippers, I just have to bow my head to these guys. I mean, they just fought throughout the season. I hate always doing hypotheticals with these guys because it's the same story every single year. But if these guys were healthy, man, it would be a whole different story. I mean, with these level of role players and having Kawhi and PG would have made the world difference. But the Suns, they have all-time level shot making. It was on display with Devin Booker. This was just a monster series from him, and he was the best player on the floor every single time. Just getting to his spots, the mid range, the free throw line, getting to the basket, and then hitting 3-point shots. This team was just tough to beat, and so you got to tip your hats off to every single guy on this roster. Even Westbrook, he struggled in this last game, but overall in the series, nobody expected this from Westbrook, and I expect to see him back in the Clippers jersey next season because he did a hell of a job for these guys, just trying his best without Kawhi and PG. So we're gonna talk about the Suns in a bit as well.
Yeah, man, Clippers again fighting back, down almost 18 coming into that fourth quarter after an avalanche, that late third from the Suns, and them just every game, the last couple games without Kawhi, just being resilient and fighting and fighting and fighting. And today, that game, especially, Westbrook, wasn't that great, but everybody else showed up. Batum off the bench, Plumlee off the bench, Trey Mann, Zubac had a nice game, Marcus Morris Sr., he had another good game, and Norman Powell had a great game, and they barely lost, but it just shows that they, without their two stars, they still can compete, and that's what they did. Every single game they were competing against the Suns, and it's tough. Devin Booker was on the heater, and then his whole series he been on the heater. And then you got KD right behind him having another efficient day of scoring. He came in clutch with a late basket late in the game against them as well. But hey, like Abby said, you got to tip your hat off to the Clippers. But there's a lot of stuff going on in that locker room. A lot of stuff going to happen during the offseason, and they got a lot of questions if they want to keep Kawhi and PG, or if they're going to trade one of them and get some assets back. But we'll see.
Yeah, man. My takeaway from this game is, you got to give credit to the Clippers for showing some heart, with their backs up against the wall, especially dropping those 2 games in Los Angeles. They did the best they could with what they had, and like Abdi said, you hate bringing up hypotheticals with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George being healthy. What could this series been, with those 2 guys? But they had to just go roll into the Phoenix with what they got, and they had a close game. It was close down the stretch in that game, and just the shot making from Kevin Durant and Devin Booker was the difference maker because if you just need superstars in that moment to kind of close out the deal and go bucket for bucket with the other 2 superstars, and that's what the Clippers lacked. And the difference maker in this series, if those 2 guys were healthy, would have been the bench from the Clippers. I feel like, as we all mentioned, throughout the course of this series, if the Clippers had their 2 guys, the bench was going to be the difference maker. But the bench showed up, but they just needed some superstar help, and obviously those 2 superstars weren't available. So, when Devin Booker's dropping 47 and then you got Kevin Durant contributing 31, it's just going to be a tough team to beat overall, man. Those 2 guys are the 2 best shot makers and one of the 2 best shot makers in our league. And, those guys are just great scoring the basketball. And so the Phoenix Suns did what they're supposed to do. They took care of business on their home floor. The Clippers, they got to go back into the drawing board and kind of just, figure out, what can we do to have these 2 guys available to us during this time of year. And it's kind of tough to kind of put an answer together for that type of question because, you can never predict injuries, man. When Kawhi Leonard was balling out in games 1 and 2 coming out of Phoenix 1-1, we were thinking this guy's going to dominate when he gets back to LA, but we didn't even get to see the chance. We didn't get the chance to see him play at all for the rest of the series. And I think his injury was like a torn meniscus, I think, in his right knee or something like that. So, it's just a tough break for Kawhi Leonard throughout the course of his career as of late, dealing with injury after injury and then we saw some clips from Paul George in practice looking good, but he was about a week away from returning. He said if the Clippers were able to advance, he would have been able to play in the second round. But unfortunately, they just didn't have that time on their hands. So overall, it was a solid season from the Clippers. Russell Westbrook, I do agree, Abdi. I do believe we'll see him in a Clippers uniform. He gave a lot for them. He gave a lot to that franchise in a little amount of time post trade deadline, and so I think he'll be around for the long haul. And for the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, I think they'll stick around for a little longer. Now that I think about it, but now we move on to the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are able to win Game 5 at home, forcing a Game 6 back in Denver. But the Denver Nuggets were able to close out Game 6 of the series. Actually, Game 4 they were able to win in Minnesota, but then they forced the Game 5 in Denver. And Denver were able to win this game 112 to 109. Anthony Edwards' efforts in that last shot to tie the game just wasn't enough.
Yeah, man. I mean, Jamal Murray, like he closed out. He had a phenomenal game. I mean, 35 points, and then Jokic, he was just emptying out the clip. And this is just one of those games where it's an elimination game, and you just got to get up shots. I mean, first half it seemed like it was leaning towards the way of the Nuggets, and then the Timberwolves in that third quarter, they battled back, and then it was kind of like a close game. And in that fourth quarter, it's just a matter of executing. And Karl-Anthony Towns, I seriously do not understand his foul trouble issue. I mean, in that fourth quarter, I think he came in with 3 or 2 fouls. He somehow still fouled out in the game. I just cannot understand that. Like, and this team, I feel like it's so close to just getting the idea of what they want, but Karl-Anthony Towns has to be the player that they look at with a microscope in this offseason. I mean, he's not the star of this team. It's clearly Anthony Edwards. He's the guy that they're going to be going to in these situations. Karl-Anthony Towns isn't somebody, I'll give him some credit for this game. I think he performed pretty well in this game. I think he did his job. He was shooting well, getting to the basket. He was being aggressive. But again, the foul troubles and his inability to just be able to play defense just showed up a lot in this series. And I felt like he wasn't able to attack Aaron Gordon as much as he could have. And then of course Gobert, like I think he did what he was supposed to do, 16 and 15. He was never going to stop Jokic, but I think he did a good job in this game. I mean, Jokic struggled from the field shooting 8 of 29, I believe. And ultimately this team, maybe if they had Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels, it would look a lot different because Jaden McDaniels would be guarding Jamal Murray, and he has given him trouble in the past, but they didn't have those two guys, and I don't think anybody had the series being close. It seemed like Denver always had control whenever they were playing these guys. And they got to look in this offseason, what do they do with Karl-Anthony Towns? He's the guy that they're going to be consistently looking at. Is he someone that we want to keep? I mean, in about 4 years' time, he's going to be making $61 million. That's just absurd. That's just ridiculous. So is that a guy that they want to keep on their roster? Is he holding them back from championship aspirations? Is he someone that they need to trade and get back some wings and get back some players and just keep Gobert and Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels and move around with them? And so I mean, I got to tip my hat out to Anthony Edwards, man. How amazing was this guy in this first round? I mean, be that poised in a playoff series, back-to-back years. I just don't know how. Like, there's no other words to describe this guy. I think in about 3 or 4 years' time, he's going to be at worst a top 5 player in this league. No question in my mind. He has all the tools possible: the shot making, the rim pressure, the athleticism, the defense, and the poise and the ability to just make big plays in the clutch. So, I tip my hat off to him. So.
Yeah, man, great, way to close out the series for the Nuggets. They held off the comeback from the Wolves, and I got to tip my hat off to Ant Edwards, man. Ant, phenomenal player, phenomenal guard, and he was going toe to toe with one of the best teams in the NBA without Karl-Anthony Towns helping him whatsoever. But that last game, I felt like towards the end of the game, Towns getting into foul trouble. And Gobert is just letting rebounds go over his head to Aaron Gordon and Jokic, and the second chance points in that late game for the Nuggets. And I feel like it closed out the deal. Although Ant had a good shot to tie the game or win the game at the end, and he almost had it. But other than that, man, I feel like Towns and Gobert, that late stretch, they just got beat. They just got beat physically and mentally, defensively on the glass, against Jokic, against whoever they were guarding. It was tough for them. So. And I feel like, phenomenal guy, phenomenal player, but it's not going to work with those two Twin Towers. And I felt like they already gave the trade haul away for Gobert. They gave a lot of pieces away for Gobert. So I felt like it's time for them to to see what they can get for Cat and build around Ant and see, get more wing players, more guards, and more depth for the team. But I don't think the two center thing is gonna work. And Denver, they play phenomenal throughout the series. Jamal Murray playing probably the best player on the court for the Nuggets that first round. So for Jokic to take a backseat and let Murray do his thing, it's a good thing that they're heading to the next round and facing up against the Suns. So great win for the Nuggets, and we'll see what Minnesota does with Cat. I feel like he's the big problem there. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, watching this game, Minnesota got off to a very, very hot start in that first quarter. They took the lead, and I thought this was going to be an interesting game, and it was an interesting game throughout the course of this game. And so, but then there's a shot making from Jamal Murray and the ability of Jokic to play bully ball in the paint against guys like Gobert and Towns was pretty much all the difference in the world in this series. Anthony Edwards, hell of a series. I got nothing bad to say about him. This is his second year in the playoffs, and he did pretty much everything he could to win in that game, game 4 at home when they were down 3-0, and he did all he could in this game as well. But I feel like he could have been a little bit more aggressive in that fourth quarter, and that's something that he did highlight in his post-game interview. He did say that he could have taken a couple more shots and could have went downhill in that fourth quarter. Obviously his 3-ball wasn't falling. He went 0 for 6 in that closeout game for the Nuggets. But he still finished with 29 points and leading the way for this team. And Karl-Anthony Towns, he did a good enough job, leaving his mark on the offensive end in that second half of Game 5. He contributed in a good way for them, 26 points, but they just needed a little bit more throughout the course of this series, for just Anthony Edwards to go to war by himself, and was just embarrassing overall for the Timberwolves, because this is a guy you're paying a lot of money to, and he's not necessarily showing up when it matters most in the postseason. So, the Minnesota Timberwolves, I feel like, they're a couple pieces away from, being playoff contenders each and every year. But if they want to take that next step and be a championship contending team, they do got to move around some pieces. And I don't think you're gonna look at Anthony Edwards or Rudy Gobert anytime soon. I feel like Karl-Anthony Towns is probably going to be the first guy out of the door, and whatever you're able to get back in return for him should be some solid pieces to help further your team and give yourself a better chance at winning a championship. So they got a bright young star on their hands, Anthony Edwards, man. Minnesota, they better not fumble this one. There's not gonna be a lot of players like Anthony Edwards that come around in this league and just dominate at a very young age. He's left his mark on this league, and he's gonna continue to do so for years to come. And so they gotta do right by him. And then for the Denver Nuggets, man, this is a 1 seed for a reason, man. They come into each and every postseason, chip on their shoulder. People, always try, talk bad about Murray and stuff like that. And but Jamal Murray, he continues to show up, and Jokic, we all know how great of a big he is. So overall, they did what they're supposed to do, taking care of business at home, closing out this series 4-1, and they went ahead and move on to the second round to play the Phoenix Suns, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But before we move off from this first round, now we move on to the last series, which is, by far the most entertaining series, and which is the Golden State Warriors versus Sacramento Kings. And the last time we talked about this series, the Kings and Warriors were tied up 2 apiece. The Sacramento Kings were able, the Golden State Warriors were able to win a road game in the first time in this series, 123-116. But the Sacramento Kings, they're very battle tested team. They were able to respond. Game 6 on the road, they end up blowing out the Warriors 118-99. And then we get a Game 7 in Sac today, and the Warriors were able to come out of this game victorious due to Steph Curry's heroics 50-piece in a Game 7, and they win this game 120-100. So what are we taking away from this series?
I mean, we gotta say, the Sacramento Kings, nobody in a million years expected them to be in a Game 7 against the defending champs before the season started. This team was projected to have a pretty good offense, maybe be a sneaky top 8 team, but nobody sat there preseason and thought, this team is going to be taking the defending champs to 7 games. So, that's a hell of a team. They're a young core. They got a lot to improve on, and I expect them to be back here next season, no question. But, for Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson to be a combined 12 for 44, and the Warriors to win this game just speaks volumes to the greatness of Steph Curry. To drop 50 points in a Game 7, I think that's probably the most points ever in a Game 7 after KD's 48 versus the Bucks in 2021. That's just a monster amount of shot making and just a constant pressure. This guy literally just decided to put his team on his back. The first half, it felt like if Steph Curry didn't have a good game, 100%, I would have believed the Kings would have blown out this team, no question, because nobody else was giving contribution. Klay Thompson was struggling, Jordan Poole was struggling, Andrew Wiggins was struggling. Where else were they going to get scoring? And Steph Curry had 20 in that first half, and he just kept pouring it on and on this team. And that's the thing about these all-time shot makers is they show up when the games get tight. When when you need them to show up the most, they're there to perform, and that's exactly what Steph Curry did. I mean, 50 in a game 7, that's ridiculous. That's just basically. This first round has given us a lot of huge performances. Devin Booker's 47. You had Jimmy Butler's 56. Now you have Steph's 50. I mean, we're consistently getting these monster performances, and it's the same type of guys that can always show up in the playoffs. So, you got to tip your hat off to Steph. And, it kind of reminds me of what Snoop Dogg said about Steph Curry. I mean, he's always in the running for the best, but he's never considered the best for some reason. And, he's showing why he deserves to have that title of being the best player in the NBA. So, again, he carried this team and he did what he had to do.
Yeah, man, Steph, 50 ball, game 7, away from home court, and he shows up, and it was just beautiful, like Abdi mentioned, Poole, Wiggins, Klay Thompson shooting 12 for 45. Where's the offense coming from? And came from one guy solely, and that was Steph Curry. But I want to highlight, on the defensive side of the ball, the Warriors had guys not going on the offensive side of the ball, but for them to completely shut down De'Aaron Fox, make him shoot 5 for 19, Malik Monk 4 for 14, and Sabonis had a good first half. He had 16 points in the first half, but second half he was a non-show, especially in the third quarter to like the last 4 or 5 minutes of the fourth, where he got some chump points in the end. But other than that, defensively the Warriors they tacked on. And Looney, man, especially him coming into the game. Another 21 rebound game, and a lot of them were second chance opportunities for the Warriors in that third quarter. And I felt like right there, them playing that, defensively on the road like that, and, Looney getting a lot of the second chance points, plus Steph 50 ball, it saved them, big time. With some players not showing up for them, these 3 guys are on the defensive side of the ball with Draymond, Wiggins playing out of his mind, Looney playing out of his mind. It saved them a lot on the defensive side of the ball. And Steph's 50 ball, heroics, man. One of the best shooters in the game, and he showed what he can do. So, great one for the Warriors. And then, the Kings, man, second seed, they played the third seed. They played phenomenal throughout the season. They coach of the year. They had a Malik Monk clutch player of the year, and it goes to show that they're building something on that team. So I feel like going into this offseason, they got to address the rebounding issue and address the big situation with them over there. But we'll see what happens. But can't wait for that second round, man. Warriors versus Lakers. Come on now.
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of a stroll backwards and talk about that game 5 in Sacramento for a little bit. And it felt like that game was going to be the difference maker and decide who's going to win this series. And when the Warriors were able to come out victorious in that series, I kind of thought the series was over there. Steph Curry, even though he didn't have it going in that game, still being able to contribute 31 points and lead the way in scoring for the Warriors. You kind of had that feeling inside where you're like, okay, this is where the Warriors turn this series around and take control, especially after winning 2 home games. And now you're going back home for a game 6. You're thinking, okay, the Warriors are going to just close this series out, and we're just going to have to sit here and congratulate the Kings for just showing up. But, shout out to the Kings, man. They didn't back down. They lost 3 straight in the middle of the season twice, and they were able to win their next game, so. And then they ended up going into San Francisco and Chase Center, and they end up blowing the Warriors out of the water, taking control of that game from start to finish. And Malik Monk did his thing, and that was Malik Monk did his thing, and Trey Lyles stepped up as well. So it was just a lot of shot making that the Warriors weren't able to keep up with. And then, Mike Brown made some crazy adjustments in that game 6 to, force a game 7 where, Sabonis was dealing with foul trouble, and he just inserted Trey Lyles in there instead of Alex Len. And it gave him a different look. It gave him a look where, you have to stretch the floor out and respect Trey Lyles' ability to shoot the 3 ball. And a lot of guys like Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox to get downhill and get to the basket at will. And so, they did what they could to force a game 7. And then in this game, last night I was thinking about this game for a little bit specifically, and then obviously you get the feeling about the dynasty run being over, and is this the last time we're going to see Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson take the floor in the playoff game? And after reading reports and stuff like that, there was something that came out of the Warriors locker room in that game 6 where they said Steph, Klay, and Dre just kind of sat there in silence, and they sat there for a very long time without saying a word to each other. And then you kind of got that feeling inside you, got the idea where like, okay, these guys are just not going to go out there and fold in this game. And, after watching this game, Steph Curry did all he could. Steph Curry is one of the greatest players we've ever witnessed, right? Coming into this postseason, I said that this is a guy if I'm going to war, this is a guy I'm calling up number one on my list. In the postseason, he shows up. These last couple of days, people have been posting threads on social media talking about he's not a clutch player, blah blah blah, all this stuff. When the going gets tough, this guy shows up. This guy doesn't fold. He doesn't do anything of that sort. And he put it on display today again. Putting up a 50 piece on the road, especially for a team that only won 11 road games this year. Everyone raised the question whether or not these guys were able to win a road game, and they're the only team to win 2 in this series. And so, Kevon Looney, the second most important player in this series as well for the Warriors, being able to dominate the glass in that fashion and play tremendous defense on Sabonis, was pretty much, along with Steph Curry's heroics, was a true difference maker in this game specifically. Third time in this series, putting up 20 rebounds, and he doesn't necessarily provide a lot of offense, but his offense is getting there on the offensive glass and allowing second and third shot opportunities for the Warriors. And a lot of people have a lot of respect for a guy like Kevon Looney, and I do believe that this guy's going to somehow, some way, end up getting a statue outside of Chase Center in 10 years, especially when his career is done. But the greats do what the greats do. Steph Curry putting up a 50 piece, most in a game 7 ever. Am I necessarily surprised? Not necessarily, because like, this is something you kind of expect from a guy like Steph Curry. You expect great players to show up in tough situations. When your backs are against the wall or you're in a tough situation, you gotta rely on your star players to kind of get you out of those jams. And this is a guy that goes to war each and every postseason and comes out on the right side of things. And so we gotta learn to appreciate what we got in front of us right now. Steph Curry's about 35 years old, and we're not going to be seeing this for too long. And so a lot of people want this dynasty run to end, and they want these guys to just go out and give another team a chance. I kind of understand that. Obviously everyone has favorite teams and they want to see their favorite team win, but at the end of the day, we got, as fans of the game of basketball, we got to learn to appreciate these guys for however long we have them for. And this is one performance I'm going to look back on and be like, this was an amazing performance. I look back on, like, when I look back at Steph Curry's performance, I look back at like Game 4 in Boston, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to look back at this performance. I'm going to rewatch it and be like, damn, this was a masterpiece from start to finish. Steph Curry put his mark on the game, and pretty much put this team on his back and didn't want these guys to go home or this dynasty run to end. So overall, shout out to the Sacramento Kings. You got to show respect where it's due. The expectation coming into the season was to just be a playing team, or kind of be on the outside looking in for the postseason. But for these guys to exceed expectations, it starts with the head of the snake, Mike Brown. He's done a hell of a job coaching these guys. De'Aaron Fox, this guy's been unstoppable throughout the course of this series. And, even with his finger injury, he was still able to, leave his mark on the game. Although he had a bad Game 7, this was his first Game 7 ever in his career. So this is a good learning, stepping stool in the right direction for them. It's a good learning experience for this young Sacramento Kings team. And for Sabonis, he's going to have to look at himself in the mirror in this offseason and be like, what can I do to better myself as a basketball player on both sides of the floor? Because of course, offensively, he didn't have it going this entire series. Looney and Draymond did a hell of a job at containing him and really taking him out of the series. But defensively was where his issues lied the most, because the Warriors were able to get downhill and get to the paint with ease whenever he was on the floor. People raised the question whether or not, the Kings were a better team with him off the floor compared to him on the floor. And so, he's going to really have to go into this offseason and really work on his game on both sides. And for the Sacramento Kings, they got to ask themselves this question, do we believe, if we want to move forward and take a step in the right direction and build a championship roster in Sacramento, do we need to add some more help down there along with Sabonis? Because we need a true rim protector, and that was pretty much all the difference maker in this series, because we know how great of a rebounder and scorer Sabonis is, but whenever he doesn't have it going and they're taking him out of the series, how are we going to put a lot of emphasis on that, on paint protection and paint scoring as a whole? Because De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk, they did all they could getting downhill and getting to the basket, and they caused a lot of problems for the Warriors. But outside of that, nobody else showed up. And the role players for the Sacramento Kings, these guys are they'll bounce back. Guys like Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, some of these guys have been there before. Keegan Murray being the rookie that he is, he'll get better and better. But these guys were too inconsistent, or they got hot extremely late for this Kings team, because all the difference in the world is a couple of games going your way where these role players are stepping up, and you need that in the postseason. You need your role players to step up, and so all the respect in the world of the Sacramento Kings. They gave us the most entertaining series in all of round one, and we can't complain about that as fans of the game. And the future is bright for Sacramento. I talked about this team thinking, these guys are going to be one of the worst teams in the Western Conference, and next thing you know, they're the third seed, and they're forcing a game 7 with the reigning champs. So you can't do much but show your respect and tip your hat to those guys. Those guys are the ultimate competitors, and those guys will be back for sure, no doubt in my mind. But overall, that wraps up round 1 of the NBA playoffs. We've had some interesting matchups, hell of entertaining series from here and there, and we got some entertaining basketball. But the playoffs doesn't stop here, so we'll go ahead and move on to our round 2 preview. We got a lot of interesting matchups there, and we'll start with the Eastern Conference. And we'll start with the Miami Heat going up against the New York Knicks. This series will start in New York on Sunday.
I got the Knicks in 6 in this game. I feel like just the overall size advantage that they have is just ridiculous, and it's even more than what they had in the Cavs, since the Cavs have those 2 bigs. But the overall size advantage that they have, I mean, outside of Brunson, they got 6'7", RJ Barrett 6'6", Josh Hart, Julius Randle, he's still nursing that ankle injury, and then of course on top of that you got Mitchell Robinson, who's 7'1". They have a lot of advantage on the size of boards, and this was a series that we really, really, really needed Tyler Hero, because Thibodeau, he's gonna respect Jimmy Butler. He's not gonna treat him like how Coach Budenholzer treated Jimmy Butler. He's gonna be putting multiple bodies on him. He's gonna send Josh Hart at him. He's gonna send Grimes at him. He's gonna shade over. He's gonna cover the gaps. He's not gonna let Jimmy Butler beat him 1-on-1. And so this would be a series where a guy like Tyler Hero would be really missed a lot, because his shot making ability this season, he's always been performing pretty well against the Knicks. So this is the type of series that we would have missed him. But a lack of a secondary shot maker is just going to hurt us a lot in this series. And Jimmy Butler is going to be forced to be a playmaker a lot more than he needs to be. And our 3-point shooting, I just don't see us consistently having that same level of 3-point shooting that we did against the Bucks. I mean, the Bucks scheme allows for 3-point shooting. They play a lot of drop coverage. They don't cover the 3-point line that well, and we were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the entire league this season. And I just don't see us. I just see us regressing to the mean. I don't see us having that same level of unreal 3-point shooting that we had against the Bucks in the first round. And I feel like the Knicks' overall physicality is going to get to us. So I got the Knicks in 6 in this game. In this series.
Abdi, man, you're down on your boys again, man. You're down on your boys again,
only because I don't think Thibodeau is gonna disrespect Jimmy Butler like Coach Bud was.
This is playoff Butler. Right? Even if Tib doesn't disrespect him, man, I'm gonna go with Heat in 7. I feel like it's gonna be a long series, and I feel like the key attributions to the series, obviously Jimmy carrying the Heat, but I feel like Bam's gonna step up a little more, and I feel like Kyle Lowry, he was playing phenomenal that last year, and I feel like he's gonna have a better role in this series, and he's gonna show up. And the only thing wrong is just the inconsistency of you guys' shooting. If you guys can get consistent on the shooting side of the ball, I feel like you guys take the Knicks out, and I feel like the Knicks, with Randall coming into the series already injured on his ankle, I'm pretty sure he's doubtful for the first game. So a lot of guys are gonna have to step up. Obi Toppin's gonna have to step up. Brunson's gonna have to show up again. RJ Barrett's gonna have to show up, and guys like that. So I feel like first game, I feel like Miami's gonna come in and punch them in their mouth, and it's gonna dictate their series. The last round Knicks against the Cavs, they're the much better physical team, but I feel like Miami, they always play physical, nose hard, physical type basketball, and they did that against the Bucks, and I feel like they're gonna do that against the Knicks. So I feel like it's going to be a physical series, but playoff Butler is going to be the best player on the court, and he's going to get some help from his supporting cast, and I got the Heat in 7.
I feel like for me, the difference in this series is going to be the health of Julius Randle. I think if he's able to, play a lot of the games in this series, I feel like the Knicks are going to be in good shape, and they'll come out of this series winning in 7 for me. Because I think, the shot making, the Knicks can match that. I think Jalen Brunson can match, Jimmy Butler and Jimmy Butler's output, not necessarily the 50 balls and stuff like that, but RJ Barrett, he'll contribute where he can, and then Julius Randle is going to be the guy that needs to step up in this series. I feel like, of course, as we mentioned, he didn't have a great first series against the Cleveland Cavaliers, but Jalen Brunson and RJ were just good enough to win that series. And the Miami Heat are a completely different team. This is a team led by Jimmy Butler. It's not a team led by Donovan Mitchell. And that's no disrespect to Donovan Mitchell, but we know how great of a playoff riser Jimmy Butler is. And I feel like, the Miami Heat being being there before, being in a situation like this where, you know, these guys are always the underdogs coming into the postseason, you know, so they've been in the situation. They know what it feels like for the people to doubt them and stuff like that. And when you got a guy like Jimmy Butler, like we mentioned, you know, you got all the shot in the world. You got the chance, you got the one of the best chances to win. And you know, I feel like the key is Julius Randle stepping up, and you know the other guys kind of just contributing where they can. And you know, this series starts in New York, so they got to come out of the situation, you know, at least 1-1 at worst, or you know, 2-0 at best. And so, you know, I feel like the Miami Heat, they're gonna lack a lot of shooting in this series. And Jimmy Butler, he's pretty much gonna have to do what he did against the Milwaukee Bucks, where you know we're gonna have to see those 40-point games. We're gonna have to see a 50-point game potentially, and I don't necessarily see that, you know, for the throughout the course of this series, because you know, like Abdi mentioned, I think Tibbs is gonna respect, you know, Jimmy Butler's ability to make some shots, and there's going to be a lot of bodies thrown at him, and there's going to be a lot of guys that have to step up outside of Jimmy Butler. You know, Kyle Lowry, Bam Adebayo, and then you know, all these others, you know, undrafted role players that kind of step up for the Miami Heat during the postseason. And so, you know, I'll go ahead and pick the Knicks to win this series in 7, but that just truly relies on the health of Julius Randle. If he's not at 100%, or he's not able to go in any of these games, then the Miami Heat are going to just take care of business like they always do, and probably win this series in 6. So for me, Knicks in 7 if Julius Randle's able to go, but if not, you know, I'll go ahead and say Heat in 6. But now we move on to the Philadelphia 76ers and the Boston Celtics. The last time we talked about the Sixers was about like a week ago. You know, these guys took care of business against the Brooklyn Nets, you know, sweeping them and earning the right to have a week off of basketball. Boston Celtics coming off a very tough series against the Atlanta Hawks, and now these two teams match up once again in the postseason. Man, I feel like we've seen these guys match up a couple years ago, and now they go again on Monday. And so, you know, Philadelphia versus Boston, who do we got?
I mean, like I would have loved to see this matchup, but you know, Joel Embiid's already doubtful for game 1. He might be flying with the team, but I highly doubt that he plays these first 2 games in Boston. I mean, the reports are coming out that he has the LCL sprain, and that literally requires 3 weeks, and he's at less than 50%. You know, before that we had heard like he just needed a week of rest and he'd be good, and it's sounding like he's going to be on the more doubtful side according to Shams and Woj. Like, and he's unlikely to play these first 2 games, which is a complete blow to the 76ers. I mean, they needed this guy out there, and it feels like his body just never allows him to be healthy at all. I think he got injured on the play where he went up to try to block Cameron Johnson, and then he fell, or he tried to go for a lip, one of the 2 plays, and then he fell down, and Cameron Johnson's legs kind of tied his ankle, and his knee kind of sprained back. So I mean, it's just unfortunate for Joel Embiid, but in this series, I got Boston Celtics winning in about 5. It's now this is more solidified by the fact that Joel Embiid's probably going to miss these first 2 games, and without him, I just don't see a situation where these guys are going to be able to beat this Celtics team. They're going to need a way better series from James Harden, who I feel like is rested. His finishing, there's no way it's going to be as bad as it was against Brooklyn Nets, who, you know, they have a guy that's switchable in Nick Claxton, and they have a lot of good perimeter defenders in Michael Bridges and Dorian Finney-Smith. And so I do think James Harden's going to have somewhat of a decent series, and Tyrese Maxey is going to be a series where he needs to show up. But ultimately, the Celtics have too much firepower, especially against a team with an injured Joel Embiid. I just don't see a situation where, you know, the 76ers are going to be able to win this without their MVP on the floor. So give me the Celtics in 5.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, with the Embiid news, it being doubtful, you know, the first 2 games is going to be tough for the Sixers. You know, they're missing their best player, the MVP most likely the MVP of the league, and it's going to be tough for them. I feel like the Celtics, they're too much equipped from the guard position to the forward position to even the bench. You know, they have the depth. They have guys like Brogdon coming off the bench, Robert Williams, you know, role players like Horford, Smart, and Derek White showing up, and then you got your 2 stars. You got Tatum and you got Jaylen Brown. And I feel like it's just too much firepower for the Sixers. You know, they're missing Embiid, and it's going to take a lot on Harden to produce and go up against these giants here. And Maxey going to have to show up, and guys like Tobias Harris, man, they're going to have to earn their paycheck. You know, the guys getting paid like that, they're going to have to come into the game and try to produce and, you know, make up for what Embiid's missing. And it's going to be tough for them. So, you know, I'm probably going to rock with the Celtics in 6, you know, given the fact that Embiid might come back, and I just feel like they'll give 2 games to the Sixers. And other than that, I just don't think the Sixers got a chance. So I'm rocking with the Celtics in 6.
Yeah, it's just an unfortunate situation. You know, for Joel Embiid specifically, it's just like, you know, each and every year we kind of hope this guy just stays healthy throughout the course of the postseason, and It just hasn't been the case these last couple of years, and he even said it in that matchup against Nikola Jokic in January, where he's like, "I'm due for a good playoff run, a great playoff run," and now it's already being cut short due to this knee injury that he sustained against the Brooklyn Nets, and so I feel like even with Joel Embiid, the series was still going to go in Boston's favor. Maybe extend this. It probably would have extended to like 6 games, but for me, I'm still gonna stick with Boston in 5. Because I just feel like with this news of Joel Embiid being out, I just don't trust guys like James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, and Tobias Harris to, keep the ship afloat until their MVP comes back. And so the the Boston Celtics, these guys know the Celtics team inside out. They've been very, very successful against this Sixers team inside out. These guys know how to beat them consistently, and I feel like the shot making from Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum is just going to be too much for these guys to handle. And at this point, after these guys get knocked out of the second round, the Sixers do got to look themselves in the mirror and ask themselves, if they have the roster and the pieces, to compete for a championship. Because I feel like even with Joel Embiid in this series, even if he were to be healthy, I feel like the Celtics will still win this series in 6. And this is a team that you're going to have to consistently run up against. You're going to have to beat the best in order to be the best. And I feel like these guys just don't have enough enough firepower to match the Boston Celtics. And so go ahead and give me the Celtics in 5. Not much for me to say out of that coming out of that series. Joel Embiid, you wish him the best in his recovery, but it's just going to be tough because, of course, in the postseason you want to see the best players go at it, and unfortunately he's not going to be available for the 76ers basketball club. But now we go ahead and move on to the Western Conference. We got an interesting matchup here to kick us off. We have the Phoenix Suns going up against the Denver Nuggets. Who do we got and why?
I got the Denver Nuggets in 7. I feel like this is going to be a series between two heavyweight offenses. I mean, you have on one side some all-time level shot making from the Phoenix Suns and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, two guys who get to their spots consistently and hit shots whenever they're able to get to them. I mean, these two mid-range assassins, we've spoken about them before. I mean, they were a ridiculous duo in that first round series, going up against a balanced offense who have the 2-time MVP. To me, the best player in this series, and one of the better playoff risers in Jamal Murray, and a bunch of contributing role players. And ultimately, I have the Denver Nuggets winning this series, just because the lack of depth, I think, is going to show up a lot more in this series. In the first round, you're going up against Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and it didn't really matter because you had Norman Powell and you're going up against Batum and Westbrook, and now all of a sudden you're going up against Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. and Nikola Jokic, and suddenly these guys are playing 45 plus minutes against those guys. And I feel like a lot of people aren't mentioning the fact that they're playing in Denver these first 2 games, and like that's a huge difference. Like that Denver altitude gets to guys. Like that atmosphere is going to make a huge difference. I feel like if they're unable to get not even one game in Denver, that's gonna shift the series completely. It may even shift the entire outlook for the entire series. So I got the Denver Nuggets winning this game. I think the depth is going to hurt them. I don't think DeAndre Ayton is going to have success guarding Nikola Jokic. I think Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are still going to have good series, but they're just going to have too many contributing players, and Chris Paul is not going to be playable in this series. I just don't think that's my one takeaway from this. I don't think Chris Paul is going to be playable in this series. That he's going to be hunted relentlessly in this series, and the Suns, I feel like this is where they're going to get exposed at going up against a team like this who just have a balanced offense. So give me the Denver Nuggets in 7.
Yeah,
Going against your pick. I mean, you had him initially going to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, but that first round series kind of just threw me off, man. That I didn't expect them to be in dogfights with role players. So,
hey man, yeah, like RB just mentioned, they were in dogfights with some role players, and now you got a balanced offense with the 2-time MVP and Jamal Murray, playoff Murray. He said he don't want to be called that because he said he does it, everyday thing for him. So, Jamal Murray showing up at this playoffs and recent playoffs, I feel like he has a bone to pick out with the Suns. That he's coming for that top spot, and I feel like this offense is just too balanced. You got Jokic, you got Murray, you got MPJ, and then you got your role players in KCP, Bruce Brown, and Aaron Gordon. So they got the depth on the bench. They they got a well balanced offense, and I feel like the Suns, man, they had their issues with the Clippers. Letting big leads get cut very quick by them. Comebacks happening quick, and not having enough guys on the bench to show up for them, and we're just relying on 2 guys on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, them 2 guys are crazy together. You know, you got KD, one of the best offensive sources, and you got Book, one of the best two guards in the league as well. So for them, you know, it's going to be tough. You know, their guys playing 45 minutes, and we know CP3 is a cone. I don't think he's going to give much on the offensive side of the ball. And plus Aiden as well, man. I feel like this guy, he's just soft. He's just soft. And I feel like he's in that bracket with Cat where he doesn't want to really get involved in the physical game. And I feel like the Nuggets are going to try to get physical with him and, you know, see if he's tough enough to hold out or just try to cancel him out the game. And I got the Nuggets in 6. I feel like it's too balanced for them. You know, defensively, they're going to be on point. And guys like KD and Book, they're going to get theirs. But where the help's going to come from the other guys? Is it going to be Aiden? Is it going to be CPO? Is it going to be Cameron Payne? Who is it going to be? So Nuggets in 6.
I'm just sitting here waiting extremely patiently to take my victory lap on this Phoenix Suns basketball club, man. I'm waiting for these guys to get knocked out of the postseason so I can go ahead and say I was one of the few people that didn't believe in this super team when it got built at the trade deadline. You know, of course, you have to respect guys like Devin Booker and guys like Kevin Durant teaming up and their ability to make shots. But you know, the one thing that I've always highlighted was, you know, the lack of depth for this team. These guys have zero depth, and that's what happens when you trade for a superstar in Kevin Durant. And you know, a lot of super teams don't have depth, a lot of depth, and you have to be able to rely heavily on those two guys and the guys that are in your starting lineup, like Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton. So my issue is I don't have any, you know, issues with or any trust issues with guys like KD and D Book. I just have a lot of issues with CP and DeAndre Ayton and what they're able to bring to this team, and along with the bench issues. And so ultimately, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Denver Nuggets in 7. You know, I picked them in the beginning of this postseason to make the Western Conference Finals, and I believe they'll do so due to the fact that I think Jamal Murray is going to have a hell of a series. I think he'll step up and show people why he's, you know, one of the top point guards in this league. And you know, Nikola Jokic is going to be a force to be reckoned with in this series. I don't think DeAndre Ayton or Bismack Biyombo are going to be able to contain this guy in the paint, and he's going to be able to do whatever he wants. And you know, DeAndre Ayton is a guy that's going to be under the microscope coming out of this series simply because, you know, they paid him all that money. They matched that contract that he got from Indy in order to keep this guy and keep the main core intact. And you know, if he's not able to contain Jokic and contribute on the offensive end, they're going to have to really question that contract that they offered him in this last offseason. And so the Denver Nuggets, the key to this series, of course, Jamal Murray and Jokic will have it going, but guys like Michael Porter Jr. Have to be perfect. You know, they gotta, you know, chip in. He has to chip in where he can. Aaron Gordon needs to do his thing and take advantage of the lack of size that the Phoenix Suns have. And he needs to be able to attack the glass and be a force around the rim. And I feel like the role players will step up and do their thing, you know, guys like Bruce Brown and KCP and stuff like that. And so, you know, the Denver Nuggets will come out of this series and with a win in 7. And then, of course, Abdi, you do bring up a good point, good take. You know, Chris Paul is going to be unplayable in this series. And, you know, it's tough because this guy's going to have to be able to play 40-something minutes in every game. And, you know, it's not going to be a good look for a guy like Chris Paul because, you know, the last time we saw this guy have a great playoff game was probably, you know, that last on his birthday, probably in Dallas in last year's postseason. It's like this guy's extremely old. He can't be playing 40 minutes. He can't be out on the floor. He's a cone on defense. You know, Patrick Beverley highlighted that when they ended up getting bounced by the Dallas Mavericks last year. And so it's just going to be tough. You know, Devin Booker and KD are going to do their thing, but where's the help going to come from outside of that? You know, you're going to rely on guys like Aiden and Josh Okogie and, you know, Damian Lee and Landry Shamet to contribute where they can. So I think the Phoenix Suns do chip away a couple games, you know, about 3 games in this series, but ultimately it's going to come down to who's going to play better defense and who's going to be able to make a lot of tough shots. And I'll trust the Denver Nuggets in any situation against this Phoenix Suns team. And so go ahead and give me the Denver Nuggets in 7. But now we move on to the last series, a series that's, you know, been in the running for a very, very long time. It's something that we looked at, you know, that when the bracket came out and, you know, we hoped for, but we finally got it now. And we got the Los Angeles Lakers going up against the Golden State Warriors in the second round of the NBA playoffs. You know, a series is going to be very, very high in the ratings. This is probably Adam Silver is a very, very happy man that he got this because the ratings are going to skyrocket through the roof. But who do we got winning and why?
I got the Lakers in 6 in this series. I think Kevon Looney's going to be unplayable in this series for some portion of this, just because, you know, when you're going from a matchup with Sabonis to Anthony Davis, it's a huge jump in. You know, he can't disrespect Anthony Davis's mid-range jump shot. I think Anthony Davis is going to cause this team a lot of problems, just the overall size and physicality that he brings. I mean, the Lakers, they have a lot of guys that play physical on this team. And, if there's one group of guys that can match that, it's definitely them. And I feel like the Lakers already played the best defense that they're going to play this entire playoffs. I mean, the Memphis Grizzlies were a top 3 defense. And, you saw that evidence in LeBron and Anthony Davis not having the best scoring playoffs. And, that's just credit to the Memphis Grizzlies defense. That's just who they are. They're defensively, they're amazing. Offensively, they do have some issues, but defensively, they're phenomenal. And, I think the Lakers already played the best defense that they're going to play for the rest of the playoffs. So, coming into this matchup, there's going to be some key notes. You're going to have LeBron James being guarded by Andrew Wiggins. You're going to have Kevon Looney and Draymond Green versus Anthony Davis. And then they might put Vando on Steph Curry, and they're going to switch around the matchups. But ultimately, I think the size of the Lakers is just too much for the Golden State Warriors to handle, and I think Anthony Davis is going to be one of his better scoring series because he's just going to be have too much size for this team. I think Draymond Green in previous series. In the past, like 2016, he was able to give Anthony Davis problems, but that was back when Anthony Davis was more of a power forward. He wasn't as big and strong as he is now. I think Anthony Davis, scoring wise, he's going to cause a lot of problems for this team. I think ultimately there's just too much size. Steph Curry's going to have his series. You're never going to stop him. But, outside of that, I think they can do a good enough job on Klay Thompson and Jordan Poole. I mean, he hasn't shown up once in this playoffs. And, I don't expect him to show up in this series. I do think Austin Reeves might end up outplaying Jordan Poole in this type of series. So I got the Lakers in 6.
I ain't got to say much. I got the Lakers at 6-2. We doubling down on this side of the ball, man. And this is a series that I've been waiting for. I wanted Memphis first round, and I told us, hey, we get Golden State second round. They're gonna get some smoke. They're gonna get some smoke. And I just want to highlight, like Abdi said, man, Memphis, one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. They gave us a little fitting problems on the offensive side of the ball for LeBron and AD. They didn't have a great offensive series, but defensively we showed up. And our role players, Rui. Guys like AR, guys like D'Lo, guys like Dennis Schroeder coming off the bench, they showed up. They played phenomenally well in games that we needed to. And I feel like, coming into this series, this is an Anthony Davis game. Right? This is an Anthony Davis series. I mean, I feel like it's his time to go show off his offensive case. It's his time. Looney has struggled in the past against AD. We've seen it. There's multiple games where he's unplayable against Anthony Davis, and it causes him problems. So, I feel like LeBron, AD, these guys are going to come in on the offensive side of the ball with a big issue, and they're going to have some fun. And I feel like the Warriors, Curry's going to get his, but guys like Klay Thompson or Kyle Korver, and guys like Jordan Poole, who was outplayed in the series, the whole series had outplayed by Malik Monk and guys like De'Aaron Fox, and he's played very well, but to have him on the bench a lot of those minutes, him not helping the starting lineup, him not being the guy that he's supposed to be, I just don't see where the offense is going to come from. Wiggins, he's on and off. There's inconsistent. He might be the second guy for Curry, but other than that, guys like Draymond, guys like Klay, guys like Poole, I feel like we're going to clamp him and we're going to have a fun series. I got the Lakers in 6. LeBron is going to take care of Curry, and Anthony Davis is going to just stamp himself on the series. A lot of people have been labeling him, hey, soft. He, 15 points here, 16 points here. He's going to give you that offensive series. You guys are going to be quiet. We've seen the defensive side of the ball. It's time for him to step up on the offensive side of the ball. So Lakers in 6, baby.
Oh man, it took everything out of me not to laugh what both of you guys just said, man. But for me, this one, I mean, obviously, I'm sticking with my pick from the start of the postseason. I think the Warriors win this series in 7. It's going to be a tough series between the Lakers and the Warriors, and I think all the difference in the world is going to go to the 3 ball for the Warriors in this series. I feel like it's a different series now that the Warriors have gone out of that series against Sacramento Kings, where it was a very fast-paced series. The Kings are a young team; they were flying up and down the court, and the Warriors had to kind of control the pace and play their style of basketball and force the Kings to play at their pace. And so I think the Warriors did a good job at that, and of course they came out of that series victorious. But going into this series, this is going to come down to LeBron James being able to assert his dominance and assert his dominance on this series. And I feel like we saw a little bit of LeBron, a little bit of his struggle show out there on display in that Memphis series. And although they're able to win that series, but this is a completely different basketball team we're talking about. This is the reigning champs, and so LeBron James, he's dealing with a foot injury. That's no breaking news to anybody. And he was struggling to get a step on Xavier Tillman. That's just no disrespect to LeBron James, but now we're on different sides and we're foes now. And so you got to highlight all of his flaws. And so he was struggling to get by Xavier Tillman, and I think the Warriors are going to be able to match that. You know, they'll probably put Wiggins on Braun, and they'll be a good matchup. He'll be able to, you know, contain them, not necessarily shut him down or anything like that. And Anthony Davis, man, you know, he's going up against a very feisty, energetic Draymond Green, a guy who, you know, brings it on the defensive side of the ball. And so he's going to really have to bring it. I don't necessarily see, you know, Kevon Looney being unplayable in this series. I can't see that simply because, you know, what type of lineup are the Lakers going to throw out there where, you know, he's unplayable. And I think, you know, in certain situations, it's like, you know, you're going to need Looney's offensive rebounding and his rebounding as a whole to kind of give you that edge in certain games. But I don't necessarily think he'll be unplayable as a whole. And so, you know, when I think about guys that are unplayable, you probably think the first guy that comes to my mind is probably a guy like Sabonis after just watching what happened in that series. I don't think the Lakers will be able to take out Looney as a whole. I think he'll be able to contribute where he can. And, you know, we all know this is probably not going to be a series for him because I don't think he'll be needed as heavily as he was in this past series because, you know, it's like you mentioned, you guys highlight the Lakers having like some sort of size advantage on the Warriors. I don't necessarily see it. They got Anthony Davis and pretty much just that's it. You know,
LeBron and Rui Hachimura.
Nah, that's not like
And Vanderbilt as well.
It's that
All
that's
those guys
not,
all the guys are like 6'8" plus.
that's not like crazy. That's not a crazy size advantage. You know, I'm thinking
Like out the Warriors' tallest player is Kevon Looney, man.
yeah, but they also got guys as well. They got Looney in there, they got Draymond in there, they got Wiggins in there as well. So
That's
it's
the
just like,
same thing. LeBron, Anthony Davis, Vanderbilt, Rui Hachimura. Those are all tall guys.
and
It's
that's the point.
size.
That's the point I'm trying to make. That I wouldn't necessarily give the Lakers a size advantage in that situation.
I
You
mean,
guys are
Anthony
making-
Davis already gives them it though. Anthony Davis is the size advantage. I mean, that's their true number
Anthony
one size.
Davis is not Sabonis. That's all I gotta say.
That my thing is Kevon Looney. He cannot guard him like he can guard Sabonis. He's not gonna sit back on him. That's the difference that's the thing that I have. He can't sit in the paint for
We
Anthony
throwing
Davis.
pick and rolls at him with D'Lo. He gonna have to step up on D'Lo.
I don't think the thing is, as long as I don't, because the thing is, the Lakers are going to try to put Vando on Steph Curry. So I feel like whenever Vanderbilt's on the floor, they're going to try to match Looney in that situation, because I think Looney will probably start out on Vando, not necessarily respecting his offensive game, and which will allow Looney to just kind of hang around the paint and grab rebounds where he can. And so, you know, if Vanderbilt's off the floor, I don't think Looney will be on the floor. It might be there, you know, to guard Anthony Davis from time to time. But you know, I expect the closing lineup for the Golden State Warriors to be with the lineup with Jordan Poole, and so you know, it's probably going small, throwing Draymond Green on Anthony Davis and then inserting Jordan Poole into the lineup. And I think that's their best shot at the Lakers. And so, and the one thing that also helps the Warriors in this situation is the fact that they start this series out at home. They have home court advantage. And so, you know, although it's a short turnaround for them, you know, they got a game in a couple of days. And so, you know, they're not going to be, you know, fully rested like the Lakers are. You know, they're one of the best teams at home. And so the Warriors, you could trust them at home. I don't necessarily think they'll have much performances like they did in Game 6 against the Sacramento Kings. And so that gives me the edge to go ahead and say the Warriors will win the series in 7. But you know, the Lakers they're coming in red hot. You know, one of the best teams since the trade deadline. You know, they play amazing defense. They can lock in, and then you know, when they play amazing defense like they did against the Grizzlies, they can just go out there on the fast break and push the pace of the game and really just take over like that. And you know, it's going to be hard for the Warriors if they let the Lakers play that type of brand of basketball. But I don't think the Warriors will do that. And I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and say Warriors in 7, but you know, this series could go either way. Jordan Poole, X factor for the Warriors for sure. That last series, I'm just gonna chalk it up and say that it wasn't the series for him. He wasn't able to, you know, match the physicality that the Sacramento Kings were throwing at him. They're throwing bodies at him. Davion Mitchell did a hell of a job. Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox, and whenever he got into the paint and you know did his little scoop layup, pretty much every time he did that, it got blocked, and the Kings were always going out there and pushing the break. And I feel like in this series, he's going to be able to do his thing due to the fact that the Lakers, you know, they got D'Lo who don't play defense. You know, Austin Reeves you can kind of respect, but at the same time, you know, on that side of the ball, I wouldn't necessarily call him like a lockdown defender or anything like that. So, you know, Jordan Poole will be able to get it going. Steph Curry is going to be able to show up. Klay Thompson will do his thing, and ultimately, this is going to come down to Steph Curry and LeBron James, and who's the better out of the two. And I'm going to ride with Steph every single time. And so the Warriors will win this series in 7. This is going to be entertaining as hell. You know, we thought the Sacramento Kings and Warriors were entertaining. You know, we got, you know, LeBron James and Steph Curry going at it for the final time probably in their careers. And, you know, we've seen these guys go at it in the NBA finals. We've never seen these guys go at it in the second round of the NBA playoffs. And so, you know, we got to appreciate it as we have it in front of us as of right now. You know, we're not going to have it for too long. And so it's going to be entertaining. But, you know, ultimately Warriors come out of this series in 7, man. But But that pretty much wraps up our second round preview and our second round predictions. We're looking forward to some more entertaining playoff basketball as these playoffs go on. But with that being said, any final words before we sign off here?
What do you guys think? I seen this on Twitter. So somebody was like, like in the NFL, if like just take for example these playoffs. You know how the Heat beat the Bucks, right? Like how the seeding, like I think in the NHL and the NFL, the higher seed basically plays a lower seed. So the Heat would have played the Celtics, and the Knicks would have played the Sixers. I feel like that makes more sense than like having a predetermined bracket after the round one, if that makes sense. Like for example, if a lower seed beats
the higher seed, it should be the higher seed playing the lower seed regardless.
Right. Yeah, that's I feel like that makes sense. Like a higher seed should always be playing the lower seed after the second round. Like the NFL, like the higher seed's always gonna play the lower seed.
I mean,
I'm just not a fan of predetermined brackets.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like, the one seed gets too much. Even if they get that one seed, I feel like, they get to play the 8th seed. Basically, you have a bye round. Some do, it hasn't been since 2011 since the team been upset since the 8th and 1 seed. It's been a minute, but switching it up second round, letting them play the lower seed, I don't know. I feel like regardless, whatever team that advances going to that lower seed, they're still a nice team, Either they play the Suns or they play the Lakers. I feel like the Nuggets will still struggle. Either way, it's going to be 2 tough matchups for them. But I don't know. I like it the NFL way, but I feel like it'd be different the NBA way.
I mean, the NFL, with the way they do it, is just like, they're gifting that 1 seed the best opportunity to win. And I feel like, it's kind of different in basketball because, normally the best team will always win. We get upsets from time to time, but at the end of the day, the best team always wins. And I don't know. I'm comfortable with how it is right now for the NBA. For the NFL, I think about it like, the Chiefs always play the lowest remaining seed because they're always the 1 seed in the AFC, and like they always handle business. And so, like, what difference does it make if you switch the matchups around in the Western Conference or the Eastern Conference of the NBA? It's just like at the end of the day, if you already make it to the second round of the playoffs, you're getting the best of the best, whatever's left. And so, the Miami Heat, they're a tough team. And if they were to go up against the Boston Celtics, it'd be an interesting series, and 76ers versus Knicks would have been entertaining as well. And so, it's a good question to raise for sure. Predetermined brackets, I think the NBA is probably the only people that still do it this way, but overall, I think regardless of the situation, we're still going to get entertaining playoff basketball, regardless of how you put the seedings in and how you stack up the matchups for the predetermined brackets. And so that's kind of where I stand with it. But overall, I'm fine with how the matchups are right now, because if the playoffs were determined, the number 1 seed playing the lowest remaining seed, we wouldn't be getting a matchup between Steph Curry and LeBron James until potentially the Western Conference Finals. And I'd rather get these guys, in the second round.
We'd have the Lakers and the Nuggets.
Lakers and Nuggets, and then we'd have Phoenix going up against the Warriors. Phoenix and
KD
Warriors,
and Steph, yeah, that ain't bad either.
It ain't bad either, but I feel like, there's, LeBron James and Steph Curry, 2 guys that got some history there. It's going to be entertaining.
It could have been KD versus LeBron too, so that's pretty entertaining as well. But
yeah. I mean, if the Suns are able to handle business, and if the Lakers or Warriors, one of those teams will come out, regardless, we'll get a matchup between those 2 guys. But we made our predictions, and we just don't think the Suns are going to be able to get out of this series alive. And so, with that being said, we'll go ahead and close out this episode here. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. We really appreciate your love and support. We'd greatly appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at New Media Podcast. And for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, all of our social media handles will be at the end of this video. And if you're listening to us on Apple and Spotify, if you go to our Instagram page at New Media Podcast, you'll be able to navigate yourself to all of our social media handles there. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now Lakes, now that's overkill.